So this is item 1, public hearing. It's the continued application of Alex Gondek Jr. for a section 12.9 minor change to the existing section 7.2.c.2 farm market special permit, accessory use associated with principal farming use, to add the accessory uses of a food truck for non-private events on Thursday and Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m. and outdoor use including consumption at 275 Doug Road, Lot W-159 Main Street, rural residence and residence AA zones, Lot N-7 Doug Road, a rural residence zone, and Lot W-159A Main Street, rural residence zone. All proposed activity is within the rural residence zone.
Great, thank you. And this is a continuation of the public hearing from the last meeting. There is a sign-up sheet in the back. If there's anyone who wants to speak, I would urge you, if you spoke the last time, I have all of your comments here saved. So we don't need to repeat anything, but if there's new items you'd like to add, feel free to sign up for that. And we'll turn it over to Meg to talk about what's happened since we were last here.
Sure. Good evening. For the record, my name is Megan Hope. I'm an attorney with Alter & Pearson here in Glastonbury. Can you hear? Is this better? No? Good evening. For the record, my name is Megan Hope. I'm an attorney with Alter & Pearson here in Glastonbury. This is the continued public hearing. As mentioned in the call of the public hearing, since the last meeting, staff has drafted a motion. I have reviewed it with my client, and we have no issues with what is proposed. So I know the motion went out in the packets, and the applicant is fine with what has been drafted.
Excellent. Is there anyone here that would like to speak that has signed up? Laura, do you mind grabbing the sign-up sheet in the back? All right, thank you. There's a couple of folks on here. Let's see, Peter and Patricia Manfredi.
They may not be on this one.
All right, not for this one.
She's in the back. Are you here for this application?
No, it's at 10:40 on
Oh, okay. I think we might have grabbed the wrong one. Yeah. All right, then. Let's see. Attorney Hope, I did have one question on condition number 5 in the motion. Can we discuss some clarity on that? Just have to find it and get it. All customers are required to leave the site at 9 p.m. Our thought on it is, or at least my thought on it is that we should just kind of clarify that a little bit in the sense of, when people start to wrap up and, because 9 o'clock could end up, meaning that people don't leave until 9:30 or so. And I think town staff was thinking about that as well, just to kind of clarify it.
Yeah, I think just the question was around the intent. Do we intend that all customers will be gone by 9 p.m.? And if so, should this be phrased more that there shall be no customers on site after 9 p.m., just to be clear?
I think the discussion last time was that she could have the customers say you're supposed to leave at 9, but there's going to be some staff left behind cleaning up. So,
right.
I mean, I think that's pretty clear, but if you want something more. But that was how I understood it, was when they have an event or a party, it's supposed to end at 9, customers are to leave, and then staff is going to remain behind and clean up.
Correct.
So leave the site by 9 p.m. instead of at. I can do that. Is that okay?
So my clients are indicating that the way they would book the event is, when you enter a contract for renting the space, that it would say that there's no music after 8:30, but the event ends at 9, and then everyone would leave.
I don't have a problem with that, unless,
I don't think that's consistent with the language, though. They're required to leave the site by 9 PM. That doesn't mean that the event is over by 9 PM. Just for clarity, I think this didn't even bring up a technical violation.
Yeah, I agree. We wouldn't want a violation. I think what we had talked about last time was that the music would end 30 minutes before the event was over. It isn't the intent that the event goes to 9:30 or anything like that. The music would end 30 minutes before the event is over and people would leave.
Would it be better to say that all events shall end by 9 PM? Staff may remain to clean up or something, or?
Excuse me, it's broader than events. Events are special parties, but you also have people there all the time, just regular.
Okay, so then just customers, or all customers?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the way it is.
I thought last time we were talking about music would end at 8:30 and people would leave by 9 PM. I'm fairly confident that's what we were talking about last time, because I know I was hoping for 8 and 8:30, and I think we were talking about leaving by 9 because the music would be cool.
That's my memory of it too.
Which, if that's correct in the language the way it's written, it's fine.
Hi, I'm Nancy Gondek, 88 Tryon Street. That's my eye. I had stated that we cannot book events till 8 o'clock at night, 8:30. It was going to be the music would end at 8:30 and the event would end at 9 o'clock. I had stated that weddings and people don't want to end their event at 8 o'clock. So it would be, the music would end at 8:30 and the event would end at 9 o'clock. And and that's that. That's for private parties and such. Because the brewery closes earlier.
So I think what the commissioner, or I think what we have to, the reality is if their event is ending at 9, people are going, they're going to be driving out at 9:01, 9:02, 9:03. There has to be some reasonable time to marshal everybody to get out. So we don't want the neighbors to be calling at 9:05 because there's cars still streaming out. So whether there should be some language, even if they all ran to their cars at 9 PM, they're not going to all be out of the site at 9 PM. So I think some sort of indication that, and maybe something to make the reality work.
Number 8 says that private events are permitted at the brewery 8 AM to 9 PM, which would suggest an ending time of 9 PM. So if we're giving them a half hour after that, then it sounds like maybe 5 needs to be amended to have a 9:30 cutoff time, if we're comfortable having them be on site for that amount of time. And the music is stopping at 8:30, which would be the most important thing to me.
I don't have a problem with that. And Nancy, we're not trying to be difficult. I just don't want you to get into a situation where the neighbors are calling. We want to kind of get something that everybody can be happy and proud of, and work with you. So I don't know how the commission feels, but if we could say that the events are over by 9 and everybody has left the premises, on staff by 9:30, I don't, is that?
Beyond staff, you said?
No,
Without, yeah. You
Say that
think
again. Okay, so the event would end at 9, and
Yeah.
then what did you say after that? I'm sorry.
everyone would need to be off the premises by 9:30. So
Oh,
that would
yes,
give
yes.
a half an hour for everybody to
I
leave.
think that people should leave, yes. Because,
I just want to make a point for the record, looking back at the minutes, this has not been adopted, but looking on page 13, where Attorney Hope is speaking, when she says that for private events, she suggests music ending by 8:30 p.m. and people leaving the premises by 9. Now we're talking about public events, but I think we were talking about the same thing at that point. So I think we're sort of, again, slipping, and I want to support this business. I just want to be very clear about that. I just think neighbors who live there, it's such a slippery slope where we're going with this, and I just, it'd be so nice to have a very hard and fast rule about this, that it's not every, I just don't want to see it keep changing and keep getting longer and longer hours. That's,
Well, and maybe what,
9 is, personally, I think leaving the premises by 9 should be more than sufficient.
maybe you need to tell, so number 7 says brewery operating hours are limited Tuesday through Friday, 4 to 8, Saturday and Sunday, 1 to 6. Those are the customers, because everything else is a private event, right? So maybe it needs to be combined with that. Brewery operating hours are limited Tuesday through Friday from 4 to 8, and Saturday, if you want to add in customers to leave within an hour of the operating ending or something, because the customers is not the private events.
Staff would have interpreted customers as all customers, whether private event or brewery customers.
Okay.
The website speaks, the website for Up in the Hill speaks to the public hours. I mean, it says 1 to 6, so no one would reasonably look at the website and think, I can go to 7 unless you're at a part of the private party. I think you can have the same hours for everything. I know last time you were talking about, you don't want to be open that late, and I completely understand. I'm sure you work very hard, and being a farmer, you're working early in the morning and late in the day. So I don't see why we can't have the same hours for everything. Just your website says what's public, and your private parties are for your customers who have private parties.
Hey, go ahead.
The other concern I have is what happens if you have a private event going on while the public event is going on? How do you differentiate the two?
Well, if we're open to the public, say 4 to 8 on a Friday, and somebody's renting a tent, that's separate. They have the tent, they're separate, they can have it catered if they want to, they can bring their own food, they're having their own
Serve
private.
alcohol both simultaneously.
Correct.
So how do the people that are there on the general public that are not part of the private, how are they differentiated when someone goes up to the bar and says, wait a minute, it's 8?
Oh, because we know, sometimes they might wear a wristband, sometimes they might have a ticket. Usually when there's a private party, we could tell, and we know, they tell us as, if they're part of that party or not. But they will have a ticket, they will have a wristband to separate the two.
It seems to me that make more sense to make them kind of at the same time frame, wouldn't it? I think somebody recommended that.
No, because I don't understand exactly what you mean by that, because the tent is during the summertime, spring to the first snowfall. We take it down prior. In the winter, we only would do a private event if we weren't open to the public, because all of our events right now are outside. 1, people want to be out, and 2, I think people are going to really want to be out with this happening again. It's able to work perfectly for us to have a private event going at the same time as the public. We separate the two. I might have as I stated before, we could have a shower that starts at 11 o'clock in the morning. The public's not there yet, and I'm having a shower from 11 o'clock to 1 o'clock inside the barn. And then I open it up to the public. They can stay if they choose to.
I don't think anyone's arguing about the early part of the day. I think it's really more about the expectation of the people in the neighborhood at the end of the day. And so that's where I think that common end time really makes sense for people, so they have an expectation of, they don't know what's going on. Like, if they can't see if there's a tent up, but they can hear the noise across the neighborhood. So I think that's really where they shouldn't have to know, oh, well, this is a private party, so they can go to 9:30 tonight, and on Saturdays they can't go past 6 unless it's public and all that. That's what I'm saying. Like, your website can facilitate the public-private part of it, and then the neighbors have expectations know you want to be a good neighbor, they want to be neighborly, I've seen all the letters, and you have very good support, including for me personally, but I think you need to give them an expectation of what they should, when they should be hearing noise and when they shouldn't be. If they're hearing noise after that, then they would have a right to complain.
With the noise factor, we have found that the only one really that can hear the noise is Jaro, which we are trying to address with him. I don't believe that anyone else has heard anything from the brewery, so if it's the noise factor, he is the only one. As it was stated, Dr. Bissell had complained to have a report prior to the hearing, but the police officer said standing there, they didn't hear anything. So for the noise factor, that isn't an issue, except for Jaro. No other neighbor can hear anything else. I mean, our location to Dr. Bissell is 5 football fields away. Our location to the end to Jaro, that's over 300 yards, which is, again, 3 football fields away. There's quite a distance. Noise has not been a problem for anyone except for this one-time issue with, not one time, but with Jaro. And we are addressing that.
Go ahead,
The traffic with leaving at night, oh, sorry, okay.
I guess to,
Excuse me, I just have some, I think may solve this, at least in my mind. Number 5, all customers required to leave the site at 9. That's really a function of the private events. Private events are limited, are defined under number 8, and that has 2 other conditions. Why don't we just move 5 and make it 8C? This way it's talking about the private event, because everybody else is leaving at 8, because the hours are at 8.
Correct.
So this is just really discussing the private events at 9. So if you make it a number C, then it's pretty clear. All customers, and if you don't like the word customers, you could say all patrons or invitees are required to leave the site at 9 o'clock.
And if that's your concern, the 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, Thursdays and Fridays we're open till 8. Very rarely do I book something Thursday and Friday evening. Past hours. It happens, but it's very rarely.
To Commissioner Shaw's point, I don't know that the problem here is the location of where this condition is. I think the condition is clear to apply to all customers. I think the question that we're facing is what time do we want people to have to leave the premises by? Right now, it's written at 9, which the applicant is saying is not feasible for them if their events are going until 9. So the question is, do we want all customers to have to leave by 9, and therefore they have to end the event earlier, or go till 9:30?
Or to your point, you could have the non-private events, the customers leave by 9, and then make a C and say the.
For private events, they can leave at 9:30.
Maybe that's the way to do it.
Ray, do you want to say that again?
Probably more realistic.
And I'm okay with a 9:30 departure time as long as the music is stopping at 8:30.
So we would change number 5 to say all customers shall commence leaving the site by 9 p.m. And then under 8, we'd make it 8C. Indoor customers shall commence leaving. Shall commence leaving the site no later than 9:30.
No.
Just say by 9:30.
Yeah.
By 9:30.
Because it's adding an extra half an hour onto the regular hours that people go.
Well, the event is over.
Required to leave by 9:30.
The event's over at 9.
So they have to.
And number 7 already limits the regular operating hours.
Yeah, that's fine.
Because if you say at 9, it makes it sound like everyone's got to get up right at 9 o'clock and leave. You can't leave before, you can't leave
That's
after.
why I said shall commence leaving by. Want to make it 9:30? That's fine.
Leave by 9.
Well, if they commence at 9:30, it could be, take a half hour more to leave.
10, so you have to leave by.
So what do you want 5 to say? All customers shall commence leaving the site by,
No, just leave it
Shall
and just
leave
change it
by-
9 to 9:30.
By 9:30,
okay,
As written.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
except for changing it to 9:30.
yeah.
just change it to 9:30.
And then change the at to a by.
Okay.
that shouldn't be a problem. Nancy indicated that usually takes about 15 minutes for everybody to leave, so.
Okay.
And we're talking about adding a C to 8C, customers shall leave the site by 9:30?
Don't think we'll need that one in light of 5.
In light of 5, okay,
Okay.
all right.
Okay.
That's what happens when you let lawyers loose on
I have a question, so
Yeah, go ahead.
in the part that says there's 10 public events per calendar year, and that they have to be scheduled in advance, 7 days in advance with the Office of Community Development, what purpose are we doing that for public events? And I guess we don't do it for private events, so what's the purpose there? At this point, I mean, can't distinguish between public and private at this point, so I'm not sure where we are.
So I think historically, there were a number of events, that they special events they wanted to have, and that's what I think was being defined now as a public event. So I was going to suggest that we somehow define that to make it consistent with what the original intent was. I think, is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, it's because this is actually a modification to a previous approval, which approved these public events.
But to the point, we never really defined
We did not.
And my memory is that the public events, we had to include that because what we were really doing is allowing food trucks at public
Correct.
events. And now we're allowing them all the time anyway. So I don't know if we even need a distinction for public events anymore.
the hours were different for these public events, which I think they were going to be.
Yeah, I don't see it. They are now.
I don't think we ever really defined what a public event is. We never put any hours around them.
Well, it does go back, sorry, it goes back to the approval they already have.
Correct.
Which is they were going to be sponsoring festivals, which it was a public event. So if you want to call it a festival or what, that's how it got started. They've said they really haven't done that many of them.
We haven't done as many. I think the intent of why, the genesis of why we added this condition where we would give notice to town staff was because these events can be quite large. Right, they had food trucks, which is how it started, but the intent was, I think, to give staff a heads up that we would have days that were popular more than normal business hours. And those were when they do the cigar day, tractor day, the vendor days where they have all the tents and people sell their products. So the idea was to give staff a heads up about those events.
Seemed to me then we need a definition for what a public event is. And also in condition number 6 says there shall be no more than 2 food trucks on the site at any time. Are food trucks now authorized all the time based on this? Or is this just
Yes.
saying?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
so
part
I
of
don't-
our request.
So if we're limiting the public events, I think we need to define what those are versus your private events and regular operating hours.
Correct. That's part of the previous approval.
Go ahead, Keith.
I'm referring to the memo dated August 6th, which lists 7 events that were previously scheduled. We need to have an amendment to this approval, grandfather in, or make an exception for those that are already scheduled. That's already on now that we're approving tonight. Just make sure your mic's on there.
Got it, thank you. I was just saying, I share the same note because a couple of the events, 3 of the 7, I believe, either go to 9:30, 10 p.m., and people are supposed to end by 9, and they are supposed to be gone. So I understand, do we grandfather these in, okay, as they would look to appear on face to violate the
And I
rules
believe that was the thought. You were going to provide the list of events. They were going to go on the record. And then obviously going forward, no events are scheduled that late.
Exactly.
Well, unless you did like 8 private events booked after today's date or something are permitted. You could do it that way. Okay.
So the only concern is there's music at all of these, acoustical music and looks like some electric music and so forth. Are there any concerns by the commissioners? I mean, they've booked these people, I mean, in
Yeah.
advance, it's like, you have to let them accommodate their requests and their contractual bookings, but, just gotta be aware of that.
I actually have a question, I had questions about that, and it's not, again, to stop it because you've
Sure.
already booked it, but I didn't know what it meant to be acoustic music. Does that mean no amp? Or does that mean no electric guitars or something? So I was just, for the public's benefit, what should they expect?
So that's the Jamie and Junk Show acoustic.
Acoustic can be amplified.
Yeah, what's that?
Yeah,
I think
well,
that's their name. So.
Oh, Jimmy the Junk Show, right.
Yeah, so what do they play?
They
and
do
what's their setup?
both. They do acoustic and non-acoustic. Acoustic is a guitar that is not plugged in to an amplifier.
I was actually referring to number 5, which is.
Oh, number 5.
Tent, acoustic music.
Oh, this
for weddings.
What do you think?
Does that mean no amp? Like-
Oh, I don't have my computer with me. It's acoustic. It's a guitar. It's probably something with 2 guitars. It's not anything that's amplified.
So no amplification, just guitar. Okay.
Guitars, right.
No guitar, no.
No electric. That's acoustic is non-amplified. It's guitars without being, that are not electric. Correct.
Again,
Okay?
Yeah, and the intent of really providing this memo was, to let the public know, but also to have something in the staff's file, so that if somebody called about hearing music after, this motion was resolved, that staff would be able to look at this list and have a reference, because, I don't know if everybody's going to remember this in November. So that was the intent.
Almost we added to each of those, any music booked after today's date shall be acoustic and non-amplified, and then on 4, any music booked after today's date
Did we
No
resolve
music
the
at night
issue
after
of,
8:30.
what constitutes a public event?
no.
Kind of skipped over it, so what do you want to do with that?
Unless you want to call it an event sponsored by the brewery,
You're talking about for the public?
for number 9, yeah.
Yes, those are sponsored by the brewery. That's,
one of the things was that they started earlier, so, right, none of them were gonna go later than the time we're talking about now, but some of them might start earlier because of the
hours.
It seems like that's the only distinction, and the crowd.
Right, I would say the size, and then perhaps in the fall, sometimes we start earlier because it's getting dark earlier. What's that usually, like 11?
Maybe that's the only distinction.
Yeah, the vendors event that we had that started at 11.
Shouldn't define that as a public event that is pre-noticed and may start before 1 o'clock.
Or may start before brewery operating hours.
We could say just may have special hours between such a time and such a time, and then you select whichever ones you want. Whatever the hours are.
Then that was in
Yeah. 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Transcribing as we speak.
Is that 10 a.m. tonight?
So yeah, vendors' day starts at 11, but they would start arriving a few hours early to set up. The vendors, not the public coming to the event. If that helps.
What do we have? Well, then wouldn't you make it 8 a.m. to 9 p.m.? Why even get into that? So what if you have, there shall be no more than 10 events open to the public and sponsored by the brewery per calendar year, which events may have hours from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., comma, with each event to be scheduled at least 7 days in advance.
9 p.m.
9 p.m.
Yeah.
9
I'm
said
sorry,
10
9 p.m. I don't know what I said. Okay.
Okay. All right. Before I close the public hearing, is there?
One more
oh, go
question,
ahead,
if I
Chris.
may. There's a reference in the call to outdoor use being allowed, including consumption, as one of the things, the purpose of the motion. I don't see that in here, though. Did I miss that?
That was part of our application. Oh, at the top, yeah.
Keith, go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding number of
Third line down.
participants at a public event, because in number 8,
Show that.
in number 8, we're limiting the number of participants to 100 if they're indoor, 150 if they're outdoor. I would imagine if it's a public event, there could be quite a few more people than 100 or 150. So do we need to take that into consideration in terms of maybe I'd like to get some input from the applicant, a rough idea of how many people may attend at a high end, if it's a really big public event.
You mean simultaneously appearing, or during the day, or some
Well,
combination?
I mean, people may come and, I don't know. I'm not familiar with the event. I don't know how many people attend these events. Some people may want to make it an all-day thing, or come later, early evening, and stay till the end. Does that mean you may have 500 cars leaving at 9 o'clock or something that may take more than 15 minutes? I just don't know if it's something we want to address or not address.
My thought would be if it's a large event, they have a deadline, they've got to start moving people out earlier and control the flow of people in as they approach closing time.
This area can accommodate a lot of people too, and a lot of cars.
I would just say that's something that would be very difficult to enforce, whereas limitations on private events, we can look at contracts, we can get a better feel for those. I don't think an open public event would easily be enforced with any kind of caps.
I think the control on like a public event would be that 7 days before, when we tell John and Rebecca, this is the event we're having, these are the hours, vendor day, 11 to 4, that would be the thing that would limit it. Those would be the restrictions on it.
Do the public events generally end earlier in the day and
Yes.
not go to 9 p.m.?
Yes.
'Cause I think that's a concern, would be, 1,000 people leaving at 9 o'clock and taking 2
No,
hours.
those are day events. So, right.
Well, I was also going to say, would you, for a public event, glasses fog up, for a public event like the vendor day, for example, would you schedule an overlapping private event at the same time? Yeah. So if you had a private event on that same day, first of all, you're probably exhausted, but second of all, it would be like later in the day anyway, and so they wouldn't overlap.
If I have a busy day, like a vendor day, I don't book any private events. It's just too much.
Okay.
A private event can go during the day, but no, we do not do that.
Okay. Is there anybody that, from the public that would like to speak on this? Sir, if you can come up and state your name and address for the record.
Jaron Owicki, 179 Tryon Street. I just want to clarify the comment that Ms. Gandick made that I'm the only person who has an issue with the music in general. A lot of people who came in, and I don't want to speak for them, they assumed that after comments by Al Gandick that they acknowledged the fact that the music was loud and it's being addressed, decided not to speak. However, that music was very daunting, and I think you guys had a privy to listen to it. So I just want to make sure that that fact is not being ignored or minimized. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, please state your name and address for the record.
Matt Stabner, 589 Hopewell Road. I'd just like to speak in support of the application. I'm a part-time farmer, and I've taken a lot of my friends to the brewery, and I like to show them the hop farming, and we like to drink beer. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Scott Bissell, 156 Doug Road. I was just wondering if you could read the document that you've been referencing for the meeting, just because we're not exactly sure what you're referencing, just so we have an idea. And then that would maybe help us provide a comment if we need to. I know there's been some modifications, but we're not sure what you're exactly discussing.
Yeah, what we're reading is a proposed motion, and we don't read generally the proposed motion is not read until the public hearing is closed. Okay, and then discussion is amongst the commissioners.
Go ahead, Sharon.
I would just like to make a comment, and I don't know how many commissioners were here when we approved the winery, but there are no limitations on the hours on the winery, so I just want people to be aware of that. And it has, seemed to work just fine. So I applaud the applicant for being willing to work with us, and you're willing to impose these restrictions on yourself. But I do want people to be aware that, it's a little bit unfair in my mind that we have another operation that's similar that has absolutely no restrictions on it. So, again, the applicant has indicated this is acceptable to them. I think it's a good compromise, but I just want to make that note for the record.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this? Okay. I will close the public hearing. Sharon, do you want to read the motion as we have it, and then we can have discussion after?
Sure. So not with any of the things we talked about changing yet?
No.
I was going to read it with those
everything.
changes.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm going to read it with the changes we've talked about so far as the initial motion. So this is a section 12.9 minor change. Move that the Town Plan and Zoning Commission approve the application of Alexander Gondek Jr. for a section 12.9 minor change to the existing section 7.2.c.2 farm market special permit, accessory use associated with principal farming use, end parentheses, to add the accessory uses of a food truck for non-private events on Thursday and Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m. and outdoor use including consumption at 275 Doug Road, being Lot W 159 Main Street, rural residence and residence AA zones, Lot N-7 Doug Road, a rural residence zone, and Lot W-159A Main Street, rural residence zone. All proposed activity is within rural residence zone. As shown on plans entitled Site Plan Modification Farm Market with Farm Brewery, prepared for Hops on the Hill Farm Brewery, LLC, 275 Doug Road, Glastonbury, Connecticut, 7-8-21, as submitted by Mexon Hegel and Friends, CE and LS, LLC, and 1. Compliance with standards contained in a report from the Fire Marshal, file number 21-028, plans reviewed July 12, 2021. 2, adherence to A, the Health Department Director's memorandum dated July 16, 2021, and B, the Police Chief's memorandum dated July 15, 2021. 3, any music booked after today's date shall be acoustic and non-amplified. 4, there should be no music after 8 p.m. for events booked after today's date. 5, all customers shall be required to leave the site by 9:30 p.m. 6, there shall be no more than 2 food trucks on site at any time. 7, brewery operating hours are limited to Tuesday through Friday from 4 to 8 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 6 p.m. 8, private events booked after today's date are permitted at the brewery from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. and may overlap with brewery operating hours, subject to the following conditions. A, indoor private events are limited to 100 participants. B, outdoor private events are limited to 150 participants. 9, there shall be no more than 10 events open to the public and sponsored by the brewery per calendar year, which events may have hours from 8 a.m. to 9 p.m., with each event to be scheduled at least 7 days in advance with the Office of Community Development.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ray Hassett. Discussion. Go ahead, Ray.
We need to move to amend, add an additional paragraph which indicates that the list of 7 events on the town staff memo dated 8/6/2021 should be grandfathered in. We discussed that.
Yeah, I tried doing that booked after today's date on all those things.
Well, I think it's just those 7 we want to limit it to.
Just say as referenced in the August 6th, 2021 memo.
So on number 8, you want to amend number 8 to say private events booked after today's date and referenced.
In the August 6, 2021 memo from town staff shall be grandfathered in
Okay.
and permitted as accordingly.
Okay. I'll second your motion to amend.
Just for clarity, is that a new C under?
I think we were going to take 8 and have private events booked after today's date as referenced in a memo from Rebecca Auger and Jonathan Mullen. I'm sorry, from Altram Pearson to Rebecca Auger and Jonathan Mullen dated August 6, 2021 shall be grandfathered in.
May I suggest it may be cleaner to just make a new C?
Yeah, I think you're probably
those.
right. Okay. So you want to just say the 7 events listed in the August 6, 2021 memorandum from Alter and Pearson to town staff shall be grandfathered in?
Sure.
Okay. All right, I'll still second his
Okay.
proposed motion.
So, further, Ray, do you have more to say?
General discussion, Mr.
Yes.
Chairman?
Wait, you want to vote on your motion, the amendment first?
Sure. Yep, we can do that.
All in favor, any further discussion on the amendment? No? Okay. All in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Passes unanimously. General discussion on the motion.
So originally, when this application came before us, we were looking at it with an eye towards, at least I was, two major concerns that I have, I should say. The first was the noise and the music. I think this applicant has, as Commissioner Pirtle has said, has gone above and beyond and has provided provisions that are going to accommodate the requests of the neighbors, and that's what good neighbors do. And I really appreciate the efforts that have been made and the movement that has occurred so that we can try to accommodate that concern of mine. My second concern was the volume of cars and the number of people that were coming in and out of Hops on the Hill. I heard from two different areas, one being our town staff and the other from a person who did a private count of cars, that the volume really wasn't that substantial. More importantly, there were not reports of excessive reports of speeding, nor were there excessive reports of people having any type of moving violations or motor vehicle accidents. So again, that suggests to me that the safety concerns that this commission is always aware of are adequate. They're adequately being maintained. I can tell you that I've been to many events at Hops on the Hill. I think that the atmosphere is a wonderful one. I think that this community needs to continue to support the agri-entertainment that we're committed to by our plan of conservation and development. And for those reasons, I'm going to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Keith?
I'm also going to vote in favor of this. I appreciate the concessions that the applicant has made, and I hope that this is something that the neighbors could live with and accept. But I don't want to ignore their concerns that they brought up again about the issues of Doug Road. And I hope this will give us an opportunity again to ask the town to take another look and see what resources they can allocate to try to come up with a better solution to Doug Road and make some improvements that would enhance everybody down there.
Ally?
Yeah, I'm going to vote in favor of this too, but I want to, and I thank the Gondaks for being, amenable to some changes. I wasn't on the commission when the winery was approved. I wasn't on the commission when this one was approved before with operating hours in it. So I think, but I also think the neighbors need some consistency here. And I saw some things in some of the letters about how it's understandably a change for those that live on this road. And while I want to respect your property rights to definitely develop your farm and create an agribusiness there, because it is so important for this town, because it's the crux of this town. I mean, it is farming and agricultural part of this town, as well as this historical but it's also a slippery slope, and where that slippery slope sort of slides towards the neighbors who moved there without this business having been there. Some of them, some yes, some no. So I think we've kind of landed in a nice spot. I just hope we're not going to see this come back again for 10 o'clock at some point, and Sunday through Saturday. I just think we need something sort of like a steady state where the neighbors can know what to expect. You can conduct your business, which is a great business, and certainly I just invited some friends there for out of town, and they were all for it. So, so I just want to be clear that it's not that I wanted to say no at any point. I just wanted some consistency and some expectations for the neighbors, and so that they can count on us and we can count on you.
Just make sure your friends leave on time.
We're all over 55. We go to bed early.
And I just want to make a
Go ahead,
comment. Just one housekeeping matter, just so it's known. We did get a number of emails, and that is part of our packet and is part of the record. We did not read them tonight. They were, I would say, predominantly in support of the application. And then secondly, I am also voting in favor of the application. I think the Gondeks have done a great job. It sounds like we've aired some issues with the neighbors. I hope it will all work out. And it's certainly been a nice alternative, particularly during COVID, I think, for people. So thank you for coming in and for working with us and your neighbors.
Chris, do you have anything?
I have nothing to add other than I haven't been to the brewery yet, but it sounds like I need to get over there.
All right. And I as well am in favor of this application. I think we did land on a good compromise. I know that it's important for the people who are neighbors to feel comfortable, and also for the applicant to feel comfortable with what's coming down for regulations on them. And I think we've landed in a good spot. I do to highlight Commissioner Shaw's concerns. I hope that this does open a conversation with the town council about Doug Road, about paving, widening it, whatever needs to be happened, whatever the residents there would like to see happen to help traffic in that area. I also think that the Gondeks have shown that they want to be a good neighbor, and that their business is successful, and that's what we need. I mean, Glastonbury's history is on the river, and they're adding a new chapter to that, and we need to just support that and be in favor of it, and hopefully we're to the point where that can happen, and the neighbors will feel comfortable coming to you if they have issues, and to talk to you about it, and we're on our way from here. So thank you all, and I will be supporting this. With that, I will ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you.
And item 2 is a public hearing. It's a text amendment. It's the insertion of section 3.27 in the building zone regulations, cannabis establishments, temporary and limited moratorium.
Thank you. Rebecca, go ahead.
Okay. So I don't want to spend way too much time on this. As you know, adult use of recreational cannabis was decriminalized through Public Act 21-1. And the act does enable municipalities to make certain regulations regarding the various types of cannabis establishments that are anticipated to develop. This is not a prohibition on cannabis establishments. This is just a temporary and limited moratorium of 18 months to buy you time to develop regulations. Your regulations may prohibit cannabis establishments, or you may develop regulations around locations of different types of establishments and other parameters. Why it's important to do a moratorium at this point: though the state is not currently licensing cannabis establishments, the Department of Consumer Protection needs to adopt all sorts of regulations and processes and procedures around that. They don't anticipate actually granting final licenses until the spring of 2022. However, they do anticipate running a lottery for applicants this fall. And once someone has gotten through a lottery, they have a provisional license. At that point, the state anticipates that provisional licensees would go on and seek zoning approval. So provisional licensees may be approaching towns as soon as the winter, which would be fast upon us. In addition, absent any regulations on licensing from the state, someone could apply now, and without having any kind of cannabis establishment specific regulations in our zoning right now, we would have to treat an application at this time as any other similar use. So a retail cannabis establishment, we would have to treat as any other retail use should someone file an application right now. And so we just want to prevent being faced with that situation by enacting a moratorium to give us time to develop regulations and have a deeper conversation with the council and with the community on what Glastonbury would like to do. So I've given you a couple of presentations in your packet that I thought were informative, one from staff within the governor's office and one from a law firm that has done a lot of work with cannabis regulations in Massachusetts and with municipalities in Massachusetts who have gone through this sooner than we have. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I don't feel the need to go through that in any great detail unless you have questions. The council has scheduled their public hearing on this for tomorrow night, so they would like your referral tonight in order to enact the moratorium effective September 1st.
Right, go ahead.
Does this deal with both producers of recreational marijuana and distributors, or?
Yes. Yes, so if you look at the proposed amendment for the moratorium, which is in your packet,
Yep.
It goes through and it defines all of the license types that the state anticipates granting. And so that includes cultivators, micro cultivators, wholesalers, retailers, manufacturers, product packagers. It's a whole host of different establishments that will seek different license types, and we're putting a moratorium on all of them.
So the one thing that, I don't know if Consumer Protection has done this for recreational marijuana, but for medical marijuana, the application for the medical marijuana needed to identify and specify where the location would be, and that there were leasehold arrangements made or ownership arrangements made for those individuals on both the production and the distribution. If we impose this marijuana, if we propose this restriction and moratorium on this, then doesn't that prevent, at least for the first round of individuals that are either applying for distribution or production facilities, that it wouldn't be here? So isn't that effectively a ban for the first few years?
So with the 18-month moratorium, if you take 18 months to develop regulations, yes, you would effectively miss the first round. Implementing an 18-month moratorium does not necessarily mean you need to take 18 months to develop your regulations.
But the licenses will be giving out well before the 18 months. So, and if the part of the application process is you have to identify where your location is, and we have a moratorium, then they can't utilize Glastonbury as a potential site for distribution or cultivation.
Correct. You would miss the first round, and to enter the lottery, you do not need to have a location. Once you become a provisional licensee, which is you've made it through the lottery process, then you're anticipated to go through a zoning process and have the location. You will not be granted, it is in the Public Act that you cannot be granted a final license until you have zoning approval.
Okay, so that's slightly different, I think, than the medical marijuana. Okay, thank you.
Ally.
So as I read the proposed amendment, one thing is up above, it mentions the act, but it refers to the act in the amendment, but it doesn't define the act, so I thought that should be in there somewhere.
Okay.
But then, in terms of the definition of cannabis establishment, it includes delivery service or transporter. And I don't think those need to be regulated by us anyway. And I don't know if, off the top of my head, whether now, with medical marijuana, or in the future during this moratorium, do we need to restrict delivery? So if somebody was setting up a delivery here, service here, out of their house, I suppose, it wouldn't need regulation. I guess, can we just exclude those two, transporter and delivery service, here in this?
Why?
Because I guess it doesn't, I mean, I don't think it needs regulating, but it almost is like if we include them in this, we're saying like it's a ban, and why would you, if you had a storefront, that's one thing, but it almost reads like a ban on having transport and delivery services in this town, so
which we cannot ban.
Well, I should say a moratorium on them, but it's as
No.
though they're banned in this
Right.
18-month period, and I don't think that's really what we're, unless you're setting up a storefront, alleys, delivery, marijuana or cannabis delivery service, that would be one thing, but.
Right. I believe that within the Public Act, it does state that towns cannot regulate delivery service or transporters. But I would have to double check that, and I don't have the full 300-page act in front of me.
I think there was something in one of the slides, too. That's kind of what drew my attention
Right.
to it, was about the slides, you couldn't prevent it. So I guess I don't see those two as being necessary in the definition of cannabis establishment.
I think we were just trying to be consistent with how the Public Act defines it, but we can take a look at that.
And I guess I had one other question. Do we know if we have any other medical marijuana producers or dispensaries now?
We do not have any.
Okay.
Keith, you have something? Your finger's near the microphone. No. Okay.
If I may, following up on the definition question, so my understanding of this, looking at the applicability, basically it puts a ban on any cannabis applications for any cannabis establishment. And in addition to the delivery service or transporter, it also mentions producer or dispensary facility. Those three terms are not defined in this regulation. It looks like all of the other categories are, but there is no definition for producer, dispensary facility, or dispensary service or transporter.
Okay.
Are those definitions somewhere else? I
Yeah.
know that producer and dispensary facility comes from the medical marijuana.
Right.
Would this also prohibit any medical marijuana applications as well under the existing law?
It would as written, because it refers to producer and dispensary facility. And those are defined under the medical marijuana
Okay, so
legislation.
the intent of the moratorium then would be also ban what's already permitted under current law as it exists.
Right. Prevent applications for any kind of cannabis establishment until you develop regulations.
Okay.
Sharon?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, we haven't put the motion on, but, my inclination is to vote in favor of it and then let the discussion come about at the council level in terms of the details and what's happening. We've had no medical marijuana applications. There might be medical people who are doing that. I don't know. I don't know that, you have people doing it out of their houses probably that are qualified. But I think it makes sense. I'm impressed with how much material you already have on this. It's obviously a lot, on top of then the affordable housing reg at the same time. It's a lot going on. Our new Building Zone Regulation Committee, which you're going to be appointing next, is going to be busy. I would vote in favor of it.
I just have a question on the definition, going back to cannabis establishment. It's very broadly defined, and maybe it's just worded a little too broadly where it includes food and beverage manufacturer. I'm assuming that means of cannabis-related products.
Correct.
It's not very clear. I know it's implied, and the only reason I bring it up is because if you go to paragraph C, it says the applicability during this temporary and limited term moratorium, cannabis establishments shall be prohibited. I mean, in a very broad language, that would mean a food and beverage manufacturer. But, so I'm just saying, it just seems a little.
Look at number 4. Food and beverage manufacturer is a defined term.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see it. Thank you.
But that kind of goes to my point, because it does say, like, those establishments shall be prohibited in the town of Glastonbury, but if I'm a local delivery person running it out of my house, that's
Running what
where.
out of your house, though? You can't dispense out of your house, that's the point.
You can if I get licensed, I can.
Well, but that's the license they're talking
No,
about.
that's the process that's taking place in the fall. It's the
That's the-
selection of
that's the-
those are taking place in the fall,
That's
and
the
then.
license, correct.
No, it's the license lottery that's happening in the fall, and then if I'm doing that, and that starts before, this is an 18-month, and that could start before
Right.
then.
So
that's my concern, and I can vote in favor of this, but as long as it's brought up at the town council, that's an issue.
So we can dig into that a little bit more, because I don't believe that you can regulate delivery and transport. And so if we need to make an exception, we can do that. I apologize, I don't have the Public Act in front of me to look at it right now. But
And
we can
maybe-
certainly do that.
Maybe in that paragraph 2, the cannabis establishments you could put in as defined in the act, so you can take care of those non-defined terms too. Just throw that in there.
This is the language of the act. This is literally the language of the
That's why it doesn't
recreational.
define the act. That's why it doesn't define it. Got it.
Keith, go ahead.
Just one more comment, again, continuing the thought on number B4, food and manufacturer, beverage manufacturer definition. It also says license to own and operate a place of business that acquires cannabis and creates food and beverages. What does it mean by acquires cannabis?
That they purchase cannabis to incorporate into the food and beverage that they manufacture.
That's not how I read it. I understand that that's what it's meant. That's not how.
Again, this is taken verbatim from the Public Act.
We don't want to reinvent the wheel.
Blame our legislators.
All right. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on this? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Sharon, do you want to read the?
Sure. Move that the Town Plan and Zoning Commission recommends to the Town Council adoption of the proposed 18-month temporary and limited moratorium on cannabis establishments, and further recommends that the joint Town Council and Town Plan and Zoning Committee on Building Zone Regulations evaluate potential new cannabis regulations.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ally. Any further discussion?
Rebecca, is there any reason we have to stick to the language of the moratorium in the act? Is that required, or we could add the term like as defined in Public Act 21-1 in those terms?
Correct.
So that would satisfy what Keith just mentioned. So I would just recommend that if you could bring that to the town council, that
Correct.
might make more sense in terms of defining some of these terms.
Yes, we can do that.
Chris? Anything? Nope. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously.
I have public hearing number 3 I have a conflict on, so I'm going to
Okay.
step down.
All right, thank you. I will appoint Commissioner Cahill to be seated in Sharon's place. And Chris, I will ask you to be secretary for the remainder of the meeting.
Going for number 3, application of Carrier Construction, Inc. for final subdivision approval for the 7-lot 1040 Main Street subdivision, 1040 Main Street, Residence AA Zone.
Great, thank you.
And I don't know if you guys want to move maybe over on this side. It's up to you, but I know we're kind of backwards tonight. All right. For the record, my name is Megan Hope. I'm an attorney with Alter & Pearson here in Glastonbury. I'm here tonight with Ron Wolf. He's a professional engineer with Wolf Engineering, the project engineer, and also Gino Carrier is in the audience. He is the president of Carrier Construction, Inc. He is the applicant and also the property owner. He purchased the property in November of 2020. Our proposal is for final subdivision approval for 7 lots at 1040 Main Street. The site is located in the Residence AA Zone and also in the Groundwater Protection Zone 1. So on the screen, I have an aerial view of the surrounding area. We have our site, 1040 Main Street, located in the center, It's basically a rectangular shaped lot that is a little over 9 acres, except the Tyrell residence right here has been carved out. So it has a little portion at the top, and then it also comes to a point here. Otherwise, it's all connected. It's directly across the street from the entrance to the Southgate condos. We also have Tryon Farm a little bit to the southwest. Located to the southwest is Mr. Blackwell's property here. We have the rear of the St. Augustine property. We have the house right here, which is located right on Pasture Pond, Mr. Crawford's property. And then we have the Lakewood open space here, which is contiguous to the east, 6.33 acres, which was set aside when the Lakewood subdivision was being installed. To the north, we have a vacant lot that is owned by the Dunnings, which live in this house here, and then the Manfredis live in this lot here. I'm going to show you a series of aerial photos of the site. It explains how the existing conditions kind of got to where they are. This is an aerial photo from 1934. Again, I've circled the site in yellow, and the Tyrell house here, the Manfredi's house here. Back in the 30s, we had 2 areas of excavation on the site, one in the easterly portion and then one in this location here. We also had farmland as well. And as you can see, as I move through the slides, this is in the 50s. Again, we are seeing that the excavation area is extended further to the east and southeast. Seeing here as well, the excavation is still present. And then in the 80s and 90s and into the 2000s, the excavation starts going away and the area is getting revegetated with woodland. This is the existing conditions map, the survey that was done on the property. You can see those features that I had mentioned in the survey. Just to orient you, Main Street is to the left side of the screen, Route 17. The previous excavation was located here, and then the other excavation was located in the rear here, where a wetland area has formed based on the excavation that was done previously on the property. As far as topography goes, Main Street is about at elevation 100. The site rises quite steeply to this area here, which peaks at about elevation 150. It then slopes down further. We get to elevation 120 in this area, and then it drops further down into the wetlands. We're about elevation 102, 104, so close to what we are back at Main Street. A couple other features I wanted to point out. There has been an existing farm road that has gone through this property for quite some time. It was visible in that aerial photo from 1934. That is still present if you go out onto the site, although it is heavily vegetated in some areas. The Tyrells, who live at 1032 Main Street here, they have a right-of-way over our property to get into their site. So that right-of-way is that crosshatched area right here. Oh, sorry. I forgot to mention, obviously, that we do have wetlands in the easterly portion of the site, and there was a vernal pool identified here as well, right in that southeast corner of the site as well. We did receive a wetlands permit from the Wetlands Commission and also a positive recommendation from the Conservation Commission on our proposal. And the only other feature I wanted to mention is that we do have an existing drainage pipe that connects to a drainage structure just off our property to the southeast, and it does connect to the wetlands. The wetlands then flow in a northerly direction off the site and continue going north until they connect basically down with the Connecticut River eventually. On the screen I have the site development plan, which we had originally started our project with. Originally we had started with 8 lots for this site, 3 on the north side of the street and 5 on the southern side of the street. When we went through the wetlands process, the Wetlands Commission was looking for us to add a little extra buffer room from the vernal pool. They like to keep 100 feet from the vernal pool undisturbed to maintain drainage patterns and cover for the vernal pool areas. So we ended up eliminating a lot and moving this house about 56 feet further to the west. It didn't change the location of this lot here, number 7, but it did allow us to give a lot more buffer space so that we weren't getting creep from people mowing their lawns, etc., into that sensitive area. So as I mentioned, we're proposing 7 lots. We're proposing a new road called Carson Way. It's 650 feet approximately, terminates in a cul-de-sac in this location here. We have 3 lots on the north side of the street and 4 lots on the southern side of the street. Just to give you the numbers, it's 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, 6, 7. Ron will get into the work that's proposed within the DOT right away here in a moment. We have received a letter of approval from them, and he'll go into that a little more detail. Regarding stormwater, the stormwater gets collected and then ends up in this detention basin in the northerly portion of the site. The town requested that we provide them with an access point in order to get to the detention basin, so that's what you're seeing along this northerly portion of the site here. So that would be a driveway that's used once or twice a year by the town when they go to service and check on the detention basin and the status of the outlet control structure. As I noted previously, we have the wetlands located in the easterly portion of the site. We have encumbered this area, so both the wetlands and this buffer area around the vernal pool as requested by the Wetlands Commission. We've placed that in a proposed private conservation easement. So that area will be preserved in perpetuity. It is contiguous to that Lakewood open space area, immediately off the plan to your right, to the east. So it's a good extension of that. This easement will encumber about 19% of the property in a conservation easement, which definitely the Conservation Commission was excited about. One of the goals of the Plan of Conservation and Development is to provide pedestrian access to conservation easement and open space areas. So we ended up proposing a pedestrian walkway, which is shown in this brown sort of cross-hatched area here. It comes off the end of the cul-de-sac and goes in this direction back to the open space right off the property. There is an area here where the 2 wetlands connect by a culvert, so there's a pipe that connects those 2. It's been there for a really long time. We are replacing it. That was part of our wetland application. And there is a footpath that currently goes over that, so we're leaving that there. And we have, I have a cross-section in a couple sides, but we have some fences on the side, so it would allow people to cross the wetland in this area. We really don't have to do much disturbance. It's already there, but we thought that that was a nice opportunity to allow residents or members of the public to be able to walk back and forth from the Lakewood open space to our open space. Okay. There is significant excavation that's required for this application, and I'll have Ron talk about the different phasing we're doing for the excavation, but it's basically in two sections. The first part is for the installation of the road, which will require significant excavation in this area where I previously mentioned we have that high point coming up to elevation 150. We also have some excavation in this area to install the detention basin that is required to detain and treat the stormwater as well. And then there's also excavation associated with the lots to get everything graded out. In total, it's about 48,251 cubic yards of material. That's about 31,000 for the road and the basin and 17,000 for the lots. If we're estimating about 18 cubic yards per truck, that comes out to 2,680 truckloads, but then that truck is coming in and going out, so that puts you at about 5,000 trucks for this, the removal of this material. Okay. Before I turn it over to Ron, I did want to mention some of the neighborhood outreach that we did with this application. When we went to the Plans Review Subcommittee meeting, it was brought up that some neighbors had talked to some members of the subcommittee, and the subcommittee recommended that we reach out to the neighbors. So right after that subcommittee meeting, we did go out and I called people, wrote letters to try and get in contact, and we did end up meeting or speaking with a lot of the neighbors in the area. So I'll just briefly go through. I know I included in my packet. I first called Mr. Allen. His house is directly across the street here. He indicated that he had no objection to the proposal. I sent him plans. I included the email, explained the excavation and the trucks, etc. I did send materials and descriptions to the president of the Southgate Condo Association as well. She also didn't have issues with the proposal. We did an on-site meeting with the Tyrells as well. They're right here in the center. We explained the proposal to them, showed them the plans. We met with them a few times. There is a letter of support. John, did that get sent out to them? Or to Bob? Okay.
I have it. I'll read it into the record.
Okay, sure. So there was a letter of support submitted by the Tyrells here as well. We did meet with the Manfredis and Cora Dunning at her house as well to review the proposal. And we also talked about specifically with the Manfredis, there is some work that we're doing in the DOT right-of-way sort of in front of the Manfredis' house. So we did go walk that area with them and explain what we were proposing. With Mr. Blackwell, met with him a few times on site. One of the things we did for him was we staked the limits of clearing in this area, and we also staked the property line. So that allowed him to walk the property line, and you could see which trees on our property were staying and which trees were going. So it gives you an idea of buffering. And we ended up, as you can see if I go back to the other plan, we did end up adding some evergreen arborvitaes in this area here. When we had, here I'll just treat the limit of clearing goes like this, and then it cuts inward like this. So there is a good amount of material here that we're obviously not touching, but in this area here there were some trees on his property, but some had, you know, been wrecked in storms, etc. So we supplemented that here as a gesture to Mr. Blackwell. I did contact Mrs. Edwards. I sent her a letter, but I have not received any further contact from her. And the last person that I talked to was Mr. Crawford. His house is over right off of Lakewood Drive here. It's right on pond pasture. He had some concerns specifically about pond pasture. He owns that pond, and he indicated that he has quite a big issue with algae getting into the pond, and a lot of that is due to fertilizer that is flowing into his pond. So he wanted to know, are we changing the drainage pattern? Are we draining into that pond? So I did send him back some emails. I talked with Ron and sent him back some pictures of the drainage pattern. So we are not disrupting the current drainage patterns right now. We have a little bit of our site that currently drains to the southeast, and we're keeping that. But if I go back to this aerial here, you'll see that it's a little hard to see on this screen, but there is a little outlet structure here. So any water that comes off of our site here, it gets caught in this outlet structure, and then it gets piped back to our wetland. So the drainage pattern, as I mentioned previously, heads in the northeast. So there is no issue with water from our site here getting to the pond. It gets captured in this structure and then heads to the north. So I did email that information to him earlier. Okay. All right, I think I'm going to turn it over to Ron at this point, and then I'll come back and kind of finish up. So do you want me to go to, I have
Site existing conditions map is good.
Oh, I'll go back. I think that's, there we go.
Once you push it. Okay.
Oh yeah. So yeah, back the side arrows.
And then this is the point.
Well, I'll use this pointer. This one's better.
Okay, thank you.
Making it complicated.
Good evening, Ron Wolf, professional engineer with my office in Woodbury, representing the owner and applicants, Carrier Construction. The property has an area of 9.343 acres and is located on the east side of Main Street, just about across the street from Southgate Drive. Zoning of the property is AA, also in the groundwater protection zone 1, with a minimum lot area of 25,000 square feet required. As Meg indicated before, the existing town-owned open space is located to the east, east of the wetland area. And The property is primarily wooded. We located a majority of the large, more mature trees on the site, and they're indicated on this existing conditions map. And the property essentially has a ridge that runs north-south. On this location, you can see the elevation is about 150. The elevation out at Main Street is about 100. So from Main Street, the property slopes up to 150 and then slopes back down, essentially draining to the northeast, with the low point of the property being in this corner over here. As Meg mentioned before, there's an existing right-of-way over the property that the Tyrells use to access their resident in the northwest corner. And there's an existing drainage easement in the south, as well as an access easement in favor of the town of Glastonbury. And there's also a little sanitary sewer easement in the northeast corner with an existing sanitary sewer manhole located there. So let me flip the drawing. This is the proposed site plan. It shows 7 lots. The lot sizes range from 31,698 square feet to 100,884 square feet. There's a proposed street. It's 22 feet wide. The proposed right-of-way is 50 feet wide, which is 10 feet wider than the town's minimum requirements, which we did just to give a little bit more room for green space and utilities in the town right-of-way. The road is about 650 feet long and ends in a cul-de-sac. The cul-de-sac has Cape Cod-style curb, which is town standard, and the remaining section of road between Main Street and the cul-de-sac is just a standard bituminous concrete curb. Just go to the next drawing. Okay, this is the plan and profile of the road. So this drawing down here shows, the dashed line shows the grade of the existing ground at the proposed roadway, which is the dashed line. So as you could see, as I mentioned earlier, the grade at Main Street is about starts at about elevation 100, slopes up to the high point, which is a ridge, and then it drops back down. So that's your existing grade. The proposed grade of the roadway has a 3% grade at the intersection with Main Street, and it slopes up to a high point that's about 357 feet in from the road, and then it starts to slope down to a low point just before the cul-de-sac where these two catch basins are located, and then it slopes up towards the end of the cul-de-sac. So just to give you an overview of how the drainage system works, we took great care to just make sure that none of the runoff was, drainage patterns weren't changing off-site, both to the north and to the south, to adjoining properties. But for the roadway, since the roadway does pitch down towards Main Street, we needed to collect that runoff from the proposed road and the proposed lots. And we collect that with 2 catch basins out at the road. And then there's a total of 8 catch basins in the road where the drainage is collected from the lots and the road, and it's directed to the detention basin. Here's a picture of the road. So here are the 2 catch basins out at Main Street, and then there are additional 6 catch basins located throughout the road. The low point is here. The drainage is directed to this detention basin, which has 2 compartments. The first compartment is the forebay, where the stormwater first enters and the larger particles separate out, and then the water flows through the, there's like a little spillway here, and the water flows over that into the second compartment where it's further treated, and then eventually flows out through a released outlet control structure, and then into the existing wetlands in the northeast corner through a grass swale. So essentially we're collecting all the runoff from the proposed roadway, with the exception of about 50 feet of road, and runoff from all the lots on the south side, all of the lots on the north side, and just a little bit, about 8,000 square feet of this area right in here that Meg mentioned before just drains towards the south to an existing outlet structure, which is an overflow from Pasture Pond. And then that is actually directed back to our site where the flow flows to the north. Just to finish up with the drainage, so this is the proposed footpath that we included. There will be a private easement over lots 3 and 4 for the footpath. And this location is the area where the existing culvert is going to be replaced. And that will allow for flow to continue from Pasture Pond through our property and continue on to the north. Let's see. The lots will be serviced by public water and sewer. We're going to connect to the existing sanitary sewer system on Main Street. It'll be a gravity system. This is the grading plan and the sedimentation erosion control plan for the road. For this project, we developed 2 sedimentation erosion control plans due to the large amount of excavation required. So this drawing essentially just shows the grading that's required to just build the roadway and the detention basin. Since the project will probably be done in 2 phases or a little bit concurrently, but in order to get access to the site, we need to get this roadway cut in from Main Street and remove this material in order to get traffic in from Main Street into the site. So we prepared this S&E plan, which shows just the grading that's required to get the roadway slopes put in per town standards, and to get the detention basin installed. And we have some notes on here regarding sedimentation erosion control measures. There's an existing swale that runs through the property north-south, just about at the end of the cul-de-sac. We're proposing to leave that in place during construction just to direct the stormwater from the site. Since everything flows towards the east, we want to direct that stormwater towards the basin. So instead of having the stormwater be directed towards the wetlands, we're directing it towards the stormwater basin. We provided a fairly detailed construction sequence for the street and the drainage system. We have maintenance requirements for the sedimentation erosion control measures, which include anti-tracking pad, temporary soil stockpiles, temporary diversion berms, erosion control matting for these slopes in this area, and then hay bales and wood chips as well. We're proposing to, there's an outlet structure in the detention basin, and what we are proposing is to temporarily block that outlet structure to an elevation that's specified on the plans to allow stormwater during construction to flow into the basin and allow the sediment time to settle out before it can be allowed to be released further on down the into the existing wetland system. Meg mentioned before, there's about 31,000 cubic yards of material that needs to be removed to get the roadway constructed, and about 17,000 cubic yards of material for the house construction. These are cross sections of the proposed road in the area, in this area where the cut is. It just shows a cross section of the road. It's something that the engineering department had asked for. Again, the dotted line is the existing grade, and the solid lines are the proposed grade of the roadway that's proposed. So it just shows the cut that's required and the roadway slopes, the proposed roadway slopes. There is a proposed sidewalk that we have on the south side of the road. that will start out on Main Street and then end at the cul-de-sac in this location. These are our erosion control notes and our construction sequence for the street. And these are just details. That's a cross-section of the detention basin. This is the footpath culvert that we're replacing that I discussed earlier. Some more details. Oh, one more thing I wanted to discuss is the sight line. So as part of the project, we needed to get an encroachment permit from the DOT, which we have received approval for. We had to demonstrate that we had adequate sight lines both to the north and the south. And in order to provide a better sight line for the 85th percentile speed, we are, the DOT asked us to just grade this area in front of, just a little further up the site. It's just north of the existing gravel driveway that provides access to the Tyrell residence. So by doing this little bit amount of grading, which is shown up in the profile, we're just going to remove a little bit of material there, and that will provide for adequate sight or improved sight line, I guess, for the proposed road, and also it's going to help the Tyrells see to the north when they leave their existing driveway. And then these are the sight line. The sight line drawing that was approved by the DOT. I think that's about all I have. Meg, we can answer any questions, or Meg?
Yeah, I'll just make a few more comments maybe. You want to take? Sure, just to make a few more comments. The plan is consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development. I included that information in the memo. Just a few things that I'll point out. This plan preserves large tracts of land, ideally those that connect to the existing open space. So we did develop our plan in such a way to allow for connectivity to the open space, and we've also extended that as well. We're promoting innovative techniques and best management practices for the treating of the groundwater. With our detention basin, we are protecting Roaring Brook, the floodway, and the floodplain associated with wetlands from Main Street through open space purchase or donation, which is accomplished by the proposed conservation easement that we are showing on the easterly portion of the site. And we are also protecting the wetlands and the vernal pool especially. As I mentioned, we extended our conservation easement further than just the limits of the wetlands so that we got that 100-foot buffer around the vernal pool, which is also consistent with the Plan of Conservation and Development. The only other item I wanted to mention before we opened it up for questions is I did get questions when I was speaking with neighbors about whether we would be doing any screening with this excavation operation. We will not be doing any screening with this excavation operation. My client already has set up where this material is going to be hauled, and they know that it's not going to be screened material. So it's just going to be removed from the site and brought to the off-site location. This should speed up the removal of material. My client thinks it should take about 4 months to get the material off the site in order to get the road and the detention basin in. So that is our estimate as far as getting that material out, and allows us to go a little bit faster because we don't need to screen and sort it as well. So I did note in the proposed motion that staff included a lot of the same conditions that were part of the Dufford application, which I had reviewed with my client, but condition number 4, there shall be no screening of excavated material. I've been over that with my client, and we're comfortable with that condition. Additionally, I did get questions from one of the neighbors about operating hours for the excavation, and again, staff has put that condition in as number 5, which indicates that operating hours for excavation shall be restricted to weekdays, Monday through Friday, between 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Excavation shall not be allowed on legal state holidays. Equipment startup and engine idling on or adjacent to the subject property shall not be permitted prior to the approved hours of operation. So we again are comfortable with that condition. I have reviewed that with my client as well. So those were just two items that I know some of the neighbors had asked me about. I had anticipated that staff was going to put them in the motion, and they did. So I just wanted to mention that in case some of the neighbors here hadn't had a chance to review the draft motion. I think with that, I'll probably open it up to questions, whether from the commission or from the public.
Go ahead, Keith.
I just have a question, just for informational purpose. I see there's a memo dated maybe there's a proposed finding of fact on the proposed motion. It's the last paragraph. It says that the excavation associated with the subdivision is found to be exempt from special permit requirements. And I just, for the record, like to know what the exemption is.
Sure.
Only because this has come up, as you know, in other applications where it's been a big issue.
Sure. So yes, I think it's definitely a valid point. We can go over this. Within the excavation regulation, so there's a special permit for excavating material. There are a few exemptions. We fall under two of those exemptions. So the first is for excavation within the roadway, which would be obviously anything within the designated area outlined in red. So when we excavate any material within that area, we do not need an excavation special permit. I believe when we did the Dufford application, that was never the one that really was confusing. That one is pretty straightforward. The second condition has to do with, and that's if you want to look at the regulations, 6.2.4.b, and that has to do with bona fide construction operations for which a building permit has been issued by the town building official. So what we will do as we proceed with this excavation, so we're obviously starting in the westerly portion of the site, moving to the east. As long as we're excavating within this right-of-way, we don't need any excavation special permit, and we don't need a building permit. But when we go outside the right-of-way, which will be somewhat early in the process, we will have to pull building permits for Lot 1 and for Lot 7 as we grade outside of the right-of-way and grade for the houses, which is part of the bona fide construction operation. So as you note, that requirement to get the building permit is part of the conditions of approval, and that is, let me see here, number 3. Prior to the start of excavation beyond the actual right-of-way, as depicted on the proposed plan, the applicant shall make applications to the town building official for construction of the proposed lots for which the excavation is said to occur. So this is, we've sort of used the Dufford framework on how we handle this application. So we will be proceeding in the exact same manner. You're welcome.
How about for the detention basin?
So for the detention basin, we're going to have to pull a permit for lots 2 and 3.
Okay.
Because outside the right-of-way, it is a public improvement, but...
Right, but it'll be part of that
Correct.
same building permit
Correct.
for that lot,
Correct.
for the improvements there.
Laura.
Just a quick question. We keep using the word excavation. My understanding in reading through the materials was that you're not doing any blasting or anything like that, that you've revised the plans to be more accommodating to the neighbors. Am I correct?
We've never had any blasting proposed with the site, and I don't think, have any test pits shown any?
We wouldn't have any to the depth that we don't anticipate that there's going to be blasting required, but if there was, it would be done in accordance with, the fire marshal and, whatever permits are required. But since the excavations are so deep, we don't have any knowledge of, ledge.
So you're not planning on doing any blasting, am I right?
We're not planning to, but if it is encountered, it will be done in accordance with, the state and the town's requirements. for blasting.
We've done.
We don't have any knowledge of any ledge that we've observed on the site yet.
And part of the, just to maybe expand on that a little bit, we've done a lot of test pits on the site. We had to do a bunch of soil sampling for the health department. We had to do test pits in the area of the detention basin. So we've never encountered ledge, which would require blasting. You know, the biggest cut in this area is 50 feet. So did we dig down 50 feet? We didn't, because you can't really do that until you start digging down. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but we haven't encountered any ledge at this point.
Okay, the reason I was asking the question is because of the surrounding of residences, and we have the Wolf Turner Shipment House just a few doors down.
Yep.
So that was a concern of mine. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Go ahead, Ray.
The excavation process, will that just be one excavator operating during those hours, or are you planning on using multiple machines?
You want?
So, yeah, there'd probably be one doing like the mass excavation, loading trucks, and then there might be another smaller excavator, you know, installing utilities or drainage, or, you know, some grading might be going on concurrently.
Okay, and what's the closest residence to where those excavators will be operating, approximately?
Probably you want to measure through the Tyrell?
Approximately.
Yeah, I can have Ron scale that on the plans. I think the closest, you know, it depends, but probably the Tyrells are going to be the closest here.
Yeah, I would say the Tyrell.
This point right here. Mr. Blackwell's house is a little bit, let me
About
see.
60 feet away from the Tyrell residence.
This is 60 feet.
60, 60?
60, yeah.
And that's where the majority of the excavation is going to be, if I understood correctly, in that general vicinity?
They're further to the south, yeah. That's just that would be measured from
Here to here, right?
From here to here. So that's just where the excavation will begin, and it will progress to the south.
And that neighbor's been consulted with this plan, and have you had any feedback from
Yes, I believe the Tyrells have submitted a letter of support. And then also, Mrs. Tyrell is here as well, and I think she might speak later.
Okay. And then you said about 2,000 in and outs between the trucks. Is that approximately correct? And that would be done in 4 months?
To 2,600 trucks, but then, you know, the truck comes in and comes out, so then you would double it to get
So
to.
it'd be- all right, so that's 5,800 truck passages, I'll call it, and over a 4-month period on a Monday to Friday. How many is that a day?
Ron's got his calculator out.
31,000 divided by-
And we're really talking about so I was actually giving.
So it's about 1,800 truckloads.
Right. So the 4 months is for that road and basin excavation. So that's 31,000 cubic yards. The rest would be on the lots and would be done like as each lot is happening. So so the number I gave you before is for everything.
Gotcha.
So I'll break it down by the road. Ron's doing that right now.
So,
So what will take the 4 months is the road?
for the road,
Okay.
yes.
Right.
And that's 3,100, you said, Tripp?
31,000 cubic yards. Yeah. Put him on the spot.
So it's about 1,800, so I'm not sure exactly how that, I'm gonna give you a rough estimation, about 1,800 loads. So if we figure, 4 loads, and I'm gonna say 4 loads
Because
an
we
hour.
got 5 days a week.
It's 4 loads an hour, so it'd be 8 hours a day. So it'd be about 32 loads a day. 32 times 18. I'm not used to this calculator. So it's about 576 yards a day. So if we do 30 times 120, so that's, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that one. I'm not sure.
Didn't know there was going to be a math test today, did you?
If you give me a minute, I will get it for you, though.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what the average number of...
Yeah, let's let Ron.
I'm going to say it could be about 4 loads an hour that can be loaded and transported off the site. So you figure an 8-hour day, it's about 32 loads a day. 32 loads times 18 yards a load is 576 yards per day.
So yeah, let's do this.
So I'm going to say
Do the
31,000
Yeah. Divided by 5.
divided by 576. That's about 54 days. So
At how many trucks going in
You
and
might
out?
have some rain days, you might have some days.
Yeah,
that-
so how many, so we're,
I'm more
We're saying-
concerned,
you
not
were
the,
saying
not the yardage,
32
I'm
32
concerned about the
loads.
traffic.
32 loads a day, so that's, yeah,
64 trips.
64 trips. The
Yeah.
truck comes in and comes out.
Exactly.
64 a day for 54 days.
32 in, 32 out.
Yeah.
Roughly.
Okay. Over an 8-hour period.
I had a couple of questions, Attorney Hope. Thank you. All the utilities on the site are going to be buried?
Correct.
Okay. And the town is going to maintain the trail off of the cul-de-sac?
No, the town is not going to maintain the trail off of the cul-de-sac. I did provide a copy of the draft pedestrian access easement in there. This was a question that the Conservation Commission asked as well, so I just included it in your packet. The developer will be creating the path. There's obviously a lot of trees on site. We're going to have some excess wood chips, so we are going to be using wood chips to initially lay down the path area. A portion of it is already kind of cleared because it was that former farm road. That's this portion over here. So we'll install it all as wood chips. I'm not proposing that the homeowners of lots, 3 and 4 have to keep laying down wood chips every year. What I indicated is that they need to make sure that it's open and passable. So they need to, walk the path and make sure that people can access it. So no, I'm not intending that the town is going to be maintaining that.
But it would be open to the public?
Correct.
Okay. And people would park in the cul-de-sac?
People would park in the cul-de-sac. We have, when we did the Stallion Ridge application, I don't know when that was that a year ago now? I know that Vice Chairman Pirtle had asked about some other examples of public access easements, and we had shown them at Great Pond in different areas. Sometimes you'll get like 1 or 2 cars parked, but typically it's people in the neighborhood are walking their dogs in the open space or just walking themselves. So yeah, you're allowed to park in the public street if you wanted to, but typically we're seeing it's adjacent homeowners who are just walking into the open space.
And would there be an HOA for the homes for any reason?
No.
Okay. And all the residents that have sidewalks,
Have
it's
to
their responsibility to maintain them?
Correct. It's their responsibility. That's according to town ordinance. And Dan Pennington, the town engineer, did want us to also place in the deed for Lot 7 to remind this homeowner that per the town ordinances, they also have to do this little tail here within the state right-of-way. So that was a condition that Dan put in his memo, which has been incorporated into the motion.
Any other comments? It is a public hearing, so I do have a couple of names. I will read the letter from Scott.
The letter from Scott and Laura Tyrell. It says, Dear Mr. Mullen, it's dated today, the 10th. My wife and I live at 1032 Main Street, immediately next to the proposed subdivision. We knew at some point that the lot would be developed and believe that a property owner has the right to develop his own property. We met with Gino Carrier, his engineer and attorney, several times and discussed the subdivision. We were shown the plans and understand the excavation involved in constructing the road. We appreciate that he reached out to us and are in support of the subdivision. Scott and Laura Tyrell, 1032 Main Street, South Glastonbury.
I just have a question for Attorney Hope again. I'm sorry, I may have missed a point. Did you say that's going to be a private road?
No, this is a public road. This is
Oh.
a town road.
Okay.
Yep.
Great. So I have the sign-up list. The first is Peter and Patricia Manfredi, 1044 Main Street.
My name is Patricia Manfredi. My husband Peter and I have owned 1044 Main Street in South Glastonbury for 26 years. The house was built in 1760 and is related to the Wells Shipman Ward house and family. It is adjacent to what will be Lot 1 in the proposed subdivision. We do not object to the subdivision. There is an existing gravel driveway from Main Street over the proposed Lot 1, and that driveway leads to what will be the detention pond in the rear of this subdivision. For 26 years, my husband and I have used the front portion of the driveway to access our barn at the back of our property. We asked Mr. Carrier to give us an easement so that we could continue to use that portion of the driveway for the sole purpose of accessing our barn. Mr. Carrier, however, while granting us an easement while we own the property, has refused to grant us a permanent easement. It is our understanding that the only recourse we have is to sue to obtain a prescriptive easement over the driveway, which would mean that the property, which is the subject of this subdivision, could be in litigation for several years. We want the commission to be aware of this situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Ron Wolf.
I just signed in.
Oh, okay.
Signed,
And then Gino Carrier, who's the applicant.
I signed him in.
Okay.
Do you want
Sure. So we did meet with the Manfredis and were contacted by their attorney, in which they requested that we grant them an easement, which would be in this area here. They would like access to their barn. Gino Carrier does not want to grant a permanent easement. He did offer instead to, I'm just going to go back to an aerial. He did offer to, it's a little bit hard here, but they have a driveway in this area. He did offer to, on their own property, build a gravel driveway to the barn this way, so that it was all on their property at his own expense, but they declined that offer. And again, as Ms. Manfredi mentioned, we did offer to give an easement that would provide access over the strip for so long as the Manfredis lived at the property, sort of like a life estate easement. And I was told by their attorney that they declined that offer. So that's, you know, she's accurate in what she explained. But again, it is not really part of the subdivision application. I'd say it's a private property matter. I did indicate to my client that there could be litigation, which was insinuated to me from the Manfredi's attorney, and that, you know, if that happens, then we would deal with it in court. But it's not within the jurisdiction of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Sir, if you want to come up and state your name and address for the record. Yep, please.
My name is Jeff Blackwell, and I'm the property owner of this piece right here.
What's that address, sir?
994 Main Street.
Okay, thank you.
And I agree with the basic concept that they have the right to develop their property. The only thing that I wanted to clarify, make sure was on the record, was that Mr. Carrier was going to give me a slice of land from here to the road to allow me to have a safer access onto Main Street. My existing driveway is a tight angle, and my lawyer felt that that would make sense for me. And I just didn't see in the presentation that that was mentioned.
Okay.
I don't have anything,
Thank you, Mr. Blackwell. Ma'am, you had your hand up if you want to come up.
Hi, my name is Laura Tyrell. I live at 1032 Main Street. I've lived there for 25 years. My husband lived there before we got married. We have no problem with this plan. We're the ones who is mostly affected by it. We are thrilled that the property in front of me and Freddie's will be cleared. That's always been I've always called the state asking them to clear on both sides because we can't see. And it's always been dangerous. So that is a big plus to us. As far as the easement, and me and Freddie's going to their barn, they've never maintained that road. They've never done any improvements to that road. It was originally put in for the house that was in back. That house is no longer there, but the road's been overgrown for a really long time. So we maintain our area, but past our house, it was way overgrown. They've never, so I do not have a problem with them.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay. Attorney Hope, do you want to address Mr. Blackwell's comment?
Sure. So yes, we did reach an agreement with Mr. Blackwell about providing him access. That is not something shown on the subdivision plan because it's not part of the subdivision, but we did make a private agreement with him to transfer him land and provide him access out to the street. So it's not going to change. I'm not going to be adding any building lots or anything within the subdivision that would trigger a re-subdivision. It's just a lot line modification. But yes, we've reached an agreement. We've signed an agreement on that.
All right. Okay. And Mr. Blackwell, that's sufficient for you?
Yes.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns from commissioners? Laura, go ahead.
I don't have a particular question, except just more of a general policy concern. And I know Glastonbury's been doing this for quite a period of time, where housing subdivisions have been constructed, and the taking care of our ponds and our pools and our streams and our different things, and in this particular case also a pathway to from Carson's Way to the open space that the town owns in private hands for upkeep. I just generally have concerns about putting these environmental treasures in private hands for safekeeping that way. I probably lean more towards town government being responsible for those, although I understand the costs associated with it, and it's a delicate balance both ways. But I did want to just express some general concern about the path of doing this, that if the private landowners are unable financially to take care of these wetland areas, or the owner refuses to upkeep you can put anything you want in a deed, and refuses to upkeep the trail, we're sort of left in a no-win position as a town. So it's just a general comment and concern about these kinds of proposals. So thank you.
Thank you. What is the recourse, Attorney Hope, if the property owners didn't maintain it?
And I'll respond first by saying we've had, and I'm jumping back to the Stallion Ridge subdivision that we did recently, and there was a lot of back and forth between the town council and the TP&Z about whether that open space should be in private conservation easement or an open space, and we got into a situation where the town council just wouldn't accept it. So we had to put it in private, and we oftentimes end up in this situation because, as you mentioned, it's a huge drain on resources. to have to maintain all these areas. We look a lot of ways to try and put trails or access points over other easements, like over a drainage easement or something that's the town already has to maintain. In this situation, you know, it didn't really make a lot of sense to put the walking path here to get people back to the open space. So we had to make a judgment call. The recourse would be against the private property owner. It is going to be in their deeds, so they're going to know about it. It's on their plot plan and their site plan.
If I could just follow up that question with your answer. You said it would be recourse against the private landowner. By who?
The town could, as part of this subdivision approval, I believe, compel the property owner that they need to maintain that because it wouldn't be in accordance with the subdivision approval, potentially.
May I ask town staff if they can help us with the question?
So I think it would be similar to other conservation easements that are held by private landowners, where the environmental planner in our office is often consulted on activities within an easement area, and may receive complaints from others about activities. In this case, it might be lack of activity in a conservation easement area. So it could be a staff led response.
As an enforcement issue or just a response to try and get compliance? They're two different things.
I would say most frequently it would be done as a response request. I would say that we're not out actively or proactively monitoring these because there are so many.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing that I would mention is we don't have to obviously put this easement, this public access easement. It's not required by the subdivision regulations. We thought it made sense, especially because there is that existing farm road. There is already a wetland crossing. And it was something we had talked about informally with the Wetlands Commission, and they thought it was a good idea. So if the commission felt very strongly against it, we could eliminate it from the plans. But that was the genesis of how we got here. We felt like it just made sense to provide a connection. There was already some kind of existing infrastructure there. It's adjacent to, over 6.5 acres of open space. And we thought it just made sense from a planning perspective, but.
And it looks like a lot of people walk through there now.
That's true.
There's an active footpath there, and there's trails all through the property and on the open space, so it seems like the property gets walked quite a bit in that area. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? All right. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. Chris, do you want to read the motion?
Sure. I noticed one difference on mine. There was a mention of number 4 being there shall be no screening of excavated material. In the official copy I have, that's just sandwiching with part of number 3. I'm just going to read it like I have it on here.
Is town staff, are you okay with that? Or
on my copy of the motion. Should I make it number 4 and then renumber the rest as it appears in the packet? Okay. Move that the Town Plan and Zoning Commission approve the application of Carrier Construction, Inc. for final subdivision approval for the 7-lot 1040 Main Street subdivision, 1040 Main Street Residence AA Zone, as shown on plans entitled Proposed 7-Lot Subdivision, 1040 Main Street, Glastonbury, CT, May 27, 2021, revisions to July 27, 2021, submitted by Wolf Engineering, Cornerstone Professional Park, Suite 101, 39 Sherman Hill Road, Woodbury, Connecticut, 06798, and 1, in compliance with A, the standards contained in report from the Fire Marshal, file 21-032, plans reviewed 7/29/21, B, conditions set forth by the Conservation Commission, Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, in their recommendation for approval to the Town Plan and Zoning Commission, and the wetlands permit issued at the regular meeting of July 22nd, 2021. 2, in adherence to the town engineer's memorandum dated August 4th, 2021. 2B is the health director's memorandum dated August 6, 2021. C, the police chief's memorandum dated July 30th, 2021. 3, prior to the start of excavation beyond the actual right-of-way as depicted on the proposed subdivision plan, sheet 7 of 20, the applicant shall make applications to the town building official for the construction of the proposed lots for which the excavation is said to occur. Number 4, there shall be no screening of excavated material. Number 5, operating hours for excavation operations shall be restricted to weekdays, Monday through Friday, between the hours of 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. Excavation operations shall not be allowed on legal state holidays. Equipment startup and or engine idling on or adjacent to the subject property shall not be permitted prior to the approved hours of operation. 6, all equipment and machinery shall be maintained in good repair and operated in such a manner as to minimize noise, vibration, smoke, dust, unsightly conditions, and any other nuisance. 7, to prevent spillage from vehicles or equipment and wind-blown air pollution. Any truckload of earth material which is to travel on public street shall be covered with a tarpaulin or other suitable material. All commercial haulers shall utilize vehicles clearly marked with the hauler's name and identification number. 8, the applicant shall provide proper drainage at all stages during and after completion of the excavation operations to prevent the collection and stagnation of water, interference with or disturbance of the flow, banks, or bed of any watercourse, the erosion of the subject property or adjoining properties, or any other harmful effects to adjoining properties or the future use of the subject property. 9, all overburden, if any, shall be stockpiled in windows or concentrated piles and stabilized so as to prevent its erosion by either wind or water, and so that it does not become a source of dust or other wind-blown air pollutants. 10, it shall be the responsibility of the applicant to repair immediately any damage to any sidewalk, curbs, surface drains, or other improvements or utilities that may be caused as a result of the excavation operations. 11, proper safety measures shall be utilized and strictly adhered to at all times to protect the health, welfare, and safety of all individuals and property. 12, all construction shall be performed in accordance with the following: A, 2002 Connecticut Guidelines for Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control as amended. B, the Connecticut Stormwater Quality Manual as amended. C, all stormwater discharge permits required by the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. D, pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes 22A 430 and 22A 430B. And D, Section 19 of the Town of Glastonbury Building Zone Regulations as amended, the Town of Glastonbury Subdivision and Re-subdivision Regulations as amended, and any additional mitigation measures to protect and or improve water quality as deemed necessary by the town. 13, each property owner shall comply with the long-term maintenance plan and schedule depicted on the approved plans to ensure the performance and pollutant removal efficiency of all privately owned stormwater management systems. 14, the applicant is hereby notified of their potential obligation to obtain authorization under the DEEP's general permit for the discharge of stormwater and dewatering wastewaters associated with construction activities, construction general permit, for any project that disturbs one or more acres of land, either individually or collectively as part of a larger common plan, and results in a point source discharge to the surface waters of the state, either directly or through a stormwater conveyance system. The applicant shall provide a copy of the stormwater pollution control plan required by the construction general permit to the town upon request. 15, this is a subdivision if unforeseen conditions are encountered during construction that would cause deviation from the approved plans. The applicant shall consult with the Office of Community Development to determine what further approvals, if any, are required.
Do we need to read?
Finding of fact, the excavation associated with the subdivision is found to be exempt from special permit requirements for excavation, filing, or removal of earth products, as described in Section 6.2 of the Town and Glastonbury Building Zone Regulations. However, because of the extensive nature of the excavation associated with the subdivision, the Commission found it necessary, and to which the applicant agreed, to include certain excavation operation standards set forth in Section 6.2 of the Town of Glastonbury Building Zone Regulations.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by Ray Hassett. Any discussion?
Does Chris need a drink of water?
I've got nothing left.
Go ahead, Ray.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to compliment the applicant on a very professional presentation. Gave a lot of answers, a lot of information. There's been an awful lot of work done on this. I think the plan is one that obviously the neighbors are here to support. Some of them are not only supporting it, but are enthusiastically in supporting it, which is wonderful. As I always am, are concerned about noise and dust and all that. It seems like that's been addressed. I don't think that the proposed construction, excavation and removal of the excavated materials will be all that invasive or evasive, I should say, to the environment and to the, hopefully to the neighbors. I think the plan's reasonable and I'm going to support it.
All right.
I would just add that I think, I mean, as usual, Attorney Hope and the applicant in this case have done a great job of reaching out to the neighbors and working with them. I think it's telling that there are many of them here to support it, including a property owner who perhaps has a private dispute with you, nevertheless was voiced no objection. I think it's great to see that working together.
Thank you, and I would agree as well. The number of trips seems intense to me, but if I don't live there, and the folks that do live there, if they're okay with that, I'm okay with it. So, thank you. All right. With that, I will ask for a vote in favor. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next item we have is a regular meeting agenda, informal session for the purpose of hearing from citizens on regular meeting agenda or non-agenda items. Is there anyone here to speak on that? All right. Number 2 is acceptance of the minutes of the July 6, 2021 regular meeting. All right, seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Oh, go ahead. Perfect. Thank you. One abstention. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously. Number 3, acceptance of the minutes of the July 20th, 21 regular meeting. Same abstention by Commissioner Cahill. Second?
Second.
Seconded by Keith Shaw. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Number 4, appointment of members to the Joint Regulations Review Subcommittee. Do you want to just briefly say what that is, Rebecca? I think we have a couple of folks picked already.
So we requested that the council appoint a couple of members to a joint subcommittee for regulation amendments. As you know, we have many prescribed by statute and others that we gave you a memo on a couple of meetings ago that we may want to look at cleaning up in the existing regulations. So this would just be to get the ball rolling. We would like to get started in September. So if you could appoint a couple of members, I believe the council is taking this up this month as well.
Great, thank you. And I believe that Commissioner Cahill and Commissioner Hassett are going to sit on that committee. So do you need anything more than that on the record? Okay, perfect. The next item is the consent calendar, which has scheduling of public hearings for the September 7th meeting and a request of Dependable Construction LLC for final subdivision approval for Stallion Ridge open space subdivisions, lot 1 to 4 and lots 25 to 29. All those in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. The chairman doesn't have a report. Does community development staff have a report? All right, with that, I will take a motion to adjourn. Move second. All in favor?
We're all in
All right.
favor.
Thank you.